Hello everyone. I am really excited to be speaking with you all this evening. We've got a lot of really wonderful representatives from the community of Huntley's District 158. I'm really excited to be talking about the Equity Action Plan with you guys. So to get started, Rocio, if you wouldn't mind just giving us perhaps a little bit of background into the Equity Committee and, how it first got formed, when you guys at the district identified a need to begin having these really comprehensive conversations about equity and inclusion.
Yes, so we started our work as a committee in September of last year as a committee, but then this is a work that the district has been talking about for several years. After the incident that we have in the high school with a racial pamphlet, that was 2017, and the district was quickly form or create a group of parents and staff members to collaborate to find what can we do as a district to prevent those situations. But it was more like a preventive step for us. After that, there was several conversations with parents and with groups of parents. And in 2018, the district created a diversity work group. And one of the most important recommendations of this group was to create an equity committee or coalition that will write a multi-year and a comprehensive plan. And that's when we start in last year with a need assessment. What are the needs of the district? What are the things that we have to prioritize when we're talking about educational equity? And finally, last year, we created the Equity Action Coalition. It was an application process. More than 100 people applied for our committee. And it was a lot of different people. We want to get different perspectives from our community. So we have board members, we have staff, certified and non-certified staff. We also have parents and community members. So that gives us a very open, different perspectives from our community. And we finally, the deliverable of that committee was our action plan. So we presented the action plan to the board last month, and now we are ready to start implementing the plan.
That is wonderful. Very exciting to hear that you guys have come so far in this sort of journey. And so then we may have touched on this when you and I spoke previously, but how many total members? I know that you had over 100 applicants, which is awesome. But how many total members are there in the coalition?
We start with 40 members, and then we're like we have meetings every month. So we were like, I would say an average between 28, 35 members each meeting. So we start meeting in November, and our last meeting was via Zoom because we already get into the pandemic. So our last two meetings were via Zoom. So it make a little more complicated the conversation. But yes, so I would say like an average will be 25, 30 people having crucial conversations about equity.
That's wonderful. So while I have you here, Rocio, I wonder if you could touch a little bit on that needs assessment, and feel free to, kind of call on other members of district staff who might have also worked on that needs assessment. It's my understanding that that was done by staff and not by, other non-staff coalition members. But if you could touch on, as far as a topic so nuanced as equity and inclusion, I understand that there were some specific incidents that really highlighted the need for this kind of work in District 158. But when you looked at, assessing the different areas that needed to be addressed or improved or changed, what did that kind of look like? Where did that start?
So our need assessment, we have 1 year, we got 1 year to do our need assessment, and we review different things. We survey our staff, we survey our parents, we look into the discipline data and through like classes, advanced classes, AP classes. We want to know what are the kids that are participating. We're a district rich in opportunities, but we felt that not all our kids were accessing those opportunities. We look into extracurricular activities, and then we have focus groups, and that's what Dr. Beeling was talking before. And I think it was a great experience for us. I will let him kind of share his experience, but we have 5 focus groups with Latinx students, Black students, white students, and LGBTQ students and Asian American students. And I think for me as an educator was one of the most powerful experience that I have. Hearing from our students make a whole difference. You know, we were reviewing data and numbers, and we're talking to staff members and interviewing parents, but when you hear from the students, that makes a whole different world. It was very powerful. I was special in the Latinx because, you know, when it was a connection with the same race. So we were very careful. We didn't conduct the focus groups ourselves. We hired Northern Illinois University team to come and do and be a little more, you know, it's always better if we have some researchers from outside facilitating those groups. And when we gather all that information, our 3 recommendations were that definitely there's blind spots that we need to work. We need professional development for our staff. We have great staff. They wanted to do what's best for the kids. They just need the tools and the language to help our students. And then the opportunities definitely for advanced classes. And probably the most important recommendation was to create this equity coalition team, to create a plan that will be not something that will be in reaction of one incident, but something deeper and more comprehensive. So we created this 5-year plan that has several facets. We have different, we have human resources, we have curriculum and instruction, we have community engagement. So we knew that it was important for us to start with a very strong and complete plan to guide our initiatives in educational equity. I will let Dr. Beeling share something about our focus groups, the focus groups that we did with high school students.
Rocio, before you go, I totally forgot. Would you mind, you know, just saying really quickly what your title with the district is?
My title is Assistant Superintendent for Special Services.
Wonderful. Okay, Marcus, take us away.
Hey, I'm Dr. Beelan. I serve as the principal of Huntley High School. I've been here now for 2 years, going on to 3. And at the ending of my first year as principal, Dr. Del Castillo approached me and it stated that we were going to be beginning to work with our equity plan, and we wanted to do some focus groups in conjunction with 2 great gentlemen from Northern Illinois University. And so as she talked about, we did 5 focus groups with students, specific gender backgrounds or what have you. And being able to sit in on and hear from our students was very emotional. It was one of those emotional roller coasters, just because students had an opportunity and a space to be amongst people who looked like them and celebrated the same traditions and had some of the same experiences. And even sitting in some, it was the first time that many of them had been in a room together as the same ethnicity. And that was just eye-opening. And for some groups, it even took them just some time to begin talking because they couldn't believe what they were experiencing during that time. And the conversation really drove itself. And like I said, it was, and like Dr. Del Castillo said, it was one of the most powerful pieces of work that we could have done to just jumpstart this equity coalition, because it gave us at least a framework in which to work off of. It also gave us the urgency to be able to begin the work and push through the work, even despite the challenges that we're facing with COVID. We recognize the importance of us needing to get through and develop a diversity plan for the sake of our kids, because they're growing up in a world right now where race is quite the big pillar of conversation in most households and in most communities, and still is and will continue to be. And I don't think had we started the work, it would have almost in a sense seemed to be reactive to situations. And we definitely are taking a proactive approach by beginning it not after a situation has happened, but really in light of just helping our students become more aware to see the world through a different lens other than what they're comfortable in seeing.
Yeah, so, Marcus, Dr. Billen, I should probably, be more formal. I got to meet you for the first time when I wrote a story on the delivery of diplomas and the little traveling graduation ceremony that you held for all of the Huntley High School students. So immediately my impression of you was that you are someone who really cares about each and every one of your students. I mean, I think it really shines through even from talking to you very briefly that day. So I guess I wonder, I think that it's really important that you guys didn't just talk to, staff members from different departments, that you went and actually did what seems like a lot of really in-depth work talking to students and different groupings of students. And, as you said, there is an urgency that came out of that. And so I guess I wonder if you can elaborate on that a little bit. And I wonder also, as the leader of Huntley High School, obviously, these are important conversations to be having at every age. But perhaps when our kids get to high school age, those conversations become more nuanced, they become even more complex. And I wonder, does your role in kind of leading all of your students through this time, does it ever feel overwhelming?
Well, first off, I will state that, across the district, and Tony and I have had incidences or situations, not incidences, more situations where we've had to rely on each other just for students who have reached out to me from his building, and that I've had to be able to connect back to him because I know that Tony has a connection with his students. And so it's really trying to help our students find a platform of people to be able to talk to, where they know that they are comfortable. And just because they don't, look like you, walk like you, act like you, experience the same traditions and celebrations and so forth that you experience within your culture, doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation. And I think that one of the things I've noticed being a part of this district as a Black male in a role of authority and as a principal and a leader within the district, that I've seen that there have been many people that can recognize the fact that they don't understand firsthand what they're going through, but they're willing to walk next to students when they are in the trench of trying to figure it out and trying to understand and trying to grapple with. Our staff is willing to sit down with them and help grapple with understanding. And if staff don't know, they're willing to reach out. So that's really invigorating to know, because I always tell the district, I told our district cabinet in our meeting and principals as when we started talking about George Floyd and kind of some of the racial challenges that we faced, is while I'm not a spokesperson for Black people, like I'm at least able to have a conversation of my experiences, and Craig is able to talk about his experience, and Valerie is a parent being in this district longer than I have been. I've learned a lot, through her. And so we all have stories to tell, and we have to be able to utilize the bits and pieces of those stories to link together for us to be able to create a common platform, but even to create a net to catch our students to say, while we don't understand, we got a ton of people that are willing to wrap their arms around you and help carry you through this, so that when they walk across that stage or the driveway at Huntley High School, they are able to understand and know kind of their roots and where they came from and how to see the world, like I stated earlier, through a different lens that other than their own or what their families have been used to, and they can be the change agents within their families. So, you know, when they're sitting at the kitchen table, they can begin pushing that conversation a little bit more because of what they're learning and what they're experiencing. And so does the job become overwhelming? It does, but it's necessary. And I think we're all in the season of time to be here and to do this work now because our students need it now more than ever.
I know that we, sorry, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, if I could just jump in really quick. I'm Craig Janke. I'm a special ed teacher at Huntley High School. I'm also the sponsor for our Gay Straight Alliance organization. And when those groups were being formed, Marcus saw me in making copies of the copier, and he was like, "Hey, Craig, like, we're doing these focus groups," and like he was like, it's not necessarily, I don't feel like Marcus is exhausted rather than like he is excited. Like he's like, we're doing these focus groups. Do you think like you'd have any kids like in your GSA who'd want to do it? And I'm like, I don't know, like, let's check. And, you know, some kids are hesitant at first, but like once they realize that they have that platform for their voices to be heard, they're ready for it. And I think that that's what's really great about our high school students in this generation is that they have things to say and they want to speak up about it, and the time is now, and that's really great.
I just want to add something really small, but the kids were ready to speak, and they were ready, they were candid, they were open. I think it was the perfect timing. That's a generation, that's our hope. So I think it was so important. We wanted between 8 and 10 kids for each focus group. And there was kids like, no, we have 20, we don't need more kids. And they were really, no, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I need to talk. I need to speak out. And Marcus, I don't know, the focus group for the Black kids, you have 20 something. And the researchers were, it's only 10 people, but they were ready to speak, and they all have the opportunity, and that was part of the great experience that we have with the high school students.
Yeah, they were not going anywhere. I mean, they brought, if you want to see kids bring their permission slips and or disclaimer forms of like, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. I mean, kids were ready. They said, look, I got this form. I'm not going anywhere. I'm sitting right here. And we looked at each other and were like, well, we got to make this work. So it was good.
That's awesome. So it sounds like perhaps it was less of an overwhelming experience because the leadership, or, you know, people taking the lead on this was perhaps divided, you know, wasn't all on anyone's shoulders. And even the kids took a big piece of that, it sounds like, with really stepping up and saying, you know, we've been waiting for this, and now that it's here, you know, we're ready to let you know what we have to say. You know, I know we have a ton of great leaders on this call, and I don't want to minimize this conversation to only high school students. So I wonder, does our middle school teacher or elementary school teacher have anything to say as far as, were there focus groups that took place at those grade levels as well?
Hi, I'm Tony Venetico. I'm the principal over at Marlowe, which is one of our 2 district middle schools. We focused the focus groups just on the high school students.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that they don't have younger siblings and they've been through the elementary and the middle school experience. So I think the reason the high school students were chosen was they've gone through the experience of the 3 levels and were able to speak. But we do have a lot of conversations with middle school students, and Marcus brought up a story which is a good one. We do have to be a team and work together. So we had a student in my school who I actually had a really positive relationship with skip over me and email Marcus, who she didn't even know, but she knew him as a Black man and a leader in the district, saying, I need your help. Kids are bullying me because of my race, and kids are saying this to me, and I don't know what to do. And Marcus and I partnered, and he responded to her and gave her some awesome advice. And he also kind of coached me. And when I sat down with her to have that conversation, she looked at me and she said, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but you just don't understand what it's like. You just don't understand what I go through every day. And it was eye-opening to me. And I think one of the things that we can do a better job at teaching our students is empathy, is how to understand what other people are going through. And right now we do live in a time where politically people feel different things. And in a middle school especially, kids are kids are willing to come in and say things like build that wall or Black Lives Matter. And it's okay for people to have certain beliefs and to believe differently than you. But we also have to understand that sometimes people are going to respond negatively because of the experiences that they or their family have had. So being empathetic of how certain words can be hurtful to others because of their experiences is something that I'm glad that we're starting to have these conversations with our students about to help them be more responsible citizens out in the world.
And I'll jump in too. I'm Laura Comos, former first and fourth grade teacher in the district, but this year I'm helping to write curriculum for interdisciplinary units. And I think that we would be kidding ourselves if we thought that these conversations are not happening in the elementary level. Students are well aware of things, and like Tony just said, they're hearing things at home. They're coming to us with different experiences. And when they come to school and talk about things, they may not realize, they may not have the intent of being divisive or starting problems, but they don't realize the impact that they're having on their classmates. And I think it's because we're afraid to have those conversations with our little kids. But they're already having the conversations, they're having life experiences. I've had students moved into my classroom because they were being bullied in other classrooms simply because the color of their skin. So I think we're kidding ourselves if we think it doesn't happen earlier than middle school and high school, which is why I'm so excited that we are taking on the interdisciplinary units and trying to address some of this. I know in a lot of our meetings that we've had, we kind of joke about it, but in the elementary level, all too often, the only Black person that students hear about is Martin Luther King. And I just think we're doing a disservice if we don't broaden their horizons and bring in other people. Not that he wasn't important, but I think there's a lot more we could be doing. So I'm excited that we're moving in that direction. And I'm excited to be able to help move in that direction.
Absolutely.
I'm William Johnson, Director of Secondary Education. Just to piggyback off something that Laura said, there is a certain level of fear amongst educators to have these difficult conversations with young adults. And I think something that Dr. Rowe did and the school board did was put on paper that the teachers are supported, and that they understand that these conversations are tough. They understand that there will be people that are uncomfortable with them, but at the highest level in our district, that they are supported and that we expect these conversations to happen.
Thank you for sure. Did anyone else have anything to say before we move on? No? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm really happy to be speaking with you know, such a diverse group of people and representatives from all different age groups. You know, we've got a parent, we've got plenty of different district and you know, other staff members from the different schools. So I think it's wonderful that, like Marcus said, you know, since this is such complex work as far as, you know, making sure that each and every student at all the schools within District 158 feel supported and like they are able to have, you know, equal and open access to all of the opportunities that District 158 is able to offer to them. You know, I think it's wonderful that you guys have taken this really interdisciplinary, interdepartmental approach as far as really leaning on each other to say, you know, who's best suited to speak with this person or this person, and how can we, you know, share resources, share advice. You know, I think perhaps it was you, Laura, who pointed out that a lot of teachers and staff and even parents aren't used to having these conversations and may just need help getting started. You know, I think that we are at a very pivotal moment right now in our history as far as, you know, the current escalation of racial tension and conversations and movements around racial inequality and equity are coming to such a point where I think, you know, Marcus, you pointed out that there is increased sense of urgency. So I was encouraged to hear when I spoke with Dr. Rowe that while this is a moment where a lot of people are just kind of finally coming on board as far as the importance of having these conversations, District 158 was kind of had already been doing that. You know, you guys had a few very horrible, unfortunate incidents that have happened, you know, with the recent history of a few of your schools that really were damaging to students, and we're so responsive to that you know said, okay, like this work needs to begin now. So I think it was really encouraging for me to reach out and find out that this has been years in the making. I wonder if does anyone want to share about, you know, some of those incidents or observations that were perhaps the impetus behind the beginning of this work before we move on to talk about the work itself.
Sure, I think I'll start in on that one only because my experiences kind of predate the genesis of this committee. And Laura, I think, my name is Valerie McCall, I'm a community member, a parent. And I think Laura talked about that these conversations need to be taking place all the way down into our ECE kindergarten years. And I have 3 Black boys in the district, and every single one of them has had some type of an incident or experience related to race throughout the district. There are situations that we have with vandalism being done to our homes. So my role, as I see it as a parent, has been to be their voice, because perhaps they were not always able to find their voice and to let it be heard within the district. So it's very exciting for me to be at this point, to be able to be a part of the coalition and to see these conversations actually taking place beyond my husband and myself and Dr. Rowe, or my husband and myself and Mr. Venetico, my husband and myself, and Mr. Brummer. So it's nice to be able to actually see this coming full circle. It's very exciting, because one of the goals that I had personally as a parent was that our younger boys, my goal was to make sure that their voice was heard, so that their experience in high school was different from our older son's experience. So this is really, you know, an exciting time in the history of District 158.
And to add to that, you know, and even with speaking with some of the situations that we have gone through, what I appreciate the most about it is that we recognize that we're not perfect, right? We also recognize the fact that we've had situations, but so has every district in some way, shape, or form have had district, and we're utilizing that as catalyst to say we don't want to be here again. So what do we need to do so that we're not here? And I think that is the key piece. Again, not being a reactive school district, but being proactive is the stance that we've taken. And all of the people who have been on this, and I think the reason that we've had such an outpouring of support and outpouring from people who have wanted to be on, like we stated, we had over 100 applicants for this thing, is because people know that the work needs to be done and they want to be a part of it, but they also too want to challenge themselves and challenge the biases and things that they may not be able to see or be able to see within themselves. And it's uncovered a lot of things for them personally. I mean, there's situations that were brought up that we're all sitting there like, wow, this happened in the district. Like, I can't believe that, you know, and realizing like, okay, well, we definitely don't want that to happen again. So how do we move past this? How do we equip our staff? How do we equip our students to be able to do it at all levels?
And we can't get better if we don't talk about it. And I think teachers are afraid to talk about it. And I think parents are afraid to talk about it, because I think we don't know what we don't know. And one of the things I appreciated most about this group is we had board members and administrators and teachers and parents, and we didn't just start writing. Like, we read a book and we had some real honest heart to hearts. And for the first couple months, we knew we were ultimately going to have a written piece that we were going to come out with. And I think we were at that meeting like, okay, let's start writing and let's go. And it was like the first 3 or 4 meetings where we didn't even talk about the plan. We just started talking about ourselves and sharing our own experiences and starting to really examine. There were a lot of exercises that I thought were going to be really uncomfortable, but actually brought people to the point of tears in that room together, where we were talking about some of our own biases and things that maybe that we were even afraid to admit out loud about things that we've done and we've said that have been racist or discriminatory in some way, or things that would make me feel uncomfortable that maybe I wouldn't be willing to sit next to a parent of kids at my school and admit. But the openness we had to really dig inside of ourselves and kind of really realize what we don't know, I think helped make our plan more authentic.
And
I
that's
think that
back on what Mr. Fanatico was saying. That's one of the things that Glenn Singleton says in his book, Courageous Conversations, is that you have to be ready to experience discomfort. That's one of the pillars that he talks about. And, you know, I think any community, not just Huntley, but any community or any district, until they're ready to experience the discomfort that comes with having the dialogue around racial issues, you're not going to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and I think like as a teacher, you know, thinking about what we experience in the classroom, and though some things may not be like overtly racist or completely wrong in the eye of a teacher, or we don't want to address them as they're being said. The book that we read, Courageous Conversations by Glenn Singleton, really opened my eye as an educator to think like, wow, like, you know, there've definitely been times where I like nod things off like, oh, like just move past it quickly. So we just don't experience this idea or feeling of discomfort that really stands in the way. And that's such a barrier. And I think that as soon as we all really understood that aspect of how to articulate ourselves and how to talk about what experiences everybody has had within our district, then the work was really able to be done at a higher level. So when we talk about the different pillars of the equity plan, and we talk about the professional development, I think that is, and especially from the students that I talk to in my GSA group, is it really does start with the teacher. It starts with that person in the classroom who is the leader. You know, we have students in the classroom who we see as leaders. We have buildings in the classroom, or people in the buildings that we see as leaders, but really making the teacher aware of all of these different things that feed into just lifting kids up and sometimes tearing them down, and knowing that and being aware of it is really, really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think those are all really great points. Okay, I want to transition into the Equity Action Plan because I think that it is a very exciting document that was, you know, the culmination of all of this hard work. And I was, you know, glad to take the time to read through it. But Rocio, or, you know, if someone else wants to speak up, if I could just have someone kind of give a brief summary of the 5 pillars within the framework. I think that I'm perhaps, you know, wrong in calling it an equity action plan. I know that there's a different title that I've now forgotten, educational equity framework, something of those along those lines. Whoever feels, you know, that they could speak to it, if someone wouldn't mind just kind of giving an overview of the 5 pillars of the plan, you know, what you guys decided to focus on as far as what needs to be changed, altered, re-examined now, and, you know, how that was determined over the course of your meetings since last year. And then if you could touch on how that was received at the June 18th board meeting. You know, Rocio, you said in your email that it went well, so I'm assuming that meant that it was approved. But if you wouldn't mind just speaking a bit to that.
Well, I will let everybody else speak. I was just smiling because and watching Tony, because we have with the title we have we vote for the title, and Tony's title.
And mine did not win, but I will still call it my title, but we won't say that in this session.
Yeah, so for one vote, right? So the title is Destination 158, an equitable approach to education. And we have several titles and we vote. So what we want is, because I think that equity work is not my department or it's high school or anybody. It's like everybody, right? It's a work that we cannot approach by only curriculum, but there is a work in human resources, in finance, in how we use our funds, and it's also how we recruit our teachers that are, you know, a mirror for our students and they represent our students. So I think our biggest, our goal was to have a plan that will represent all these different aspects of the education of our organization, and that's what we call it, pillars. And we wanted just to be actionable goals, something that we, since the beginning, they want, okay, let's stop talking about this and what are the actions, how we're going to measure our success. So the plan was created in a way that we have, this is our criteria of success, these are some of the of the issues that we're having, and this goal is going to address those issues. And it also has a timeline with, you know, when are we going to hit those marks and how we're going to measure our success. So if you ask me what's important about the plan, I think it's a very comprehensive plan, but it's an action plan. And that's what we want to name our committee, an Equity Action Coalition, because the action is important, very important for us, and the implementation. I don't know if that answered the question. Somebody else want to add something?
Yeah, I can jump in and add something. And really we looked at in these 5 pillars that we looked at, we wanted to look at what were the critical issues that we could define, and then we summed it up to what were the 2 goals? What are 2 goals that address these critical issues? And so we looked at, I hope I get them all. Opportunity and access, curriculum and instruction. We also looked at hiring and retention, as well as the recruitment of teachers, especially because we've had a lot of conversations about people of minority background to be, you know, in roles of leadership as well as educators, and that's a big challenge across our nation. And then professional learning and engagement, and then the focus on the community, right? And so looking at how our relationships and the connection between the school, the family, as well as community entities all integrate. And so looking at that and looking at all of those pillars, that kind of encapsulates like all of what we wanted to cover. And I really think that that's the net that covers a lot of, you know, when developing a plan. Those are, of course, the critical areas that you want. But then our team really focused on what are those critical pieces and those goals in each one, and figuring out how we can track those, how they were going to be measurable and attainable for us to reach as we move throughout this plan over the next couple of years. And then really forming our team to be able to come back together to say, okay, hey, did we do it? And if we didn't, what do we need to do to be able to get there? Bill is very good at that, just in the job of on the curriculum and instruction side. And so seeing his drive come back to, okay, how do we know that we did what we needed to do? And then what's the quickest way to get there? But because, you know, I always tell our high schoolers, like, you got 4 years to make this the best 4-year experience. And so when kids enter our district, where they spend their time, you know, at a high school level or at an elementary or middle school level, at each level, how are you going to make sure that you have the foundation that you need so that when you do leave, we know that you have everything that we were looking for you to have, and for our staff to be able to grow as well. So.
Yeah, and I think what you say, Marcus, is very important too, that it's all of us, right? So we have goals that are for the human resources department, goals that are for curriculum. We have our curriculum, our ninjas writing those culturally relevant units of instruction and interdisciplinary units. But then also Bill is thinking about how it's going to infuse that in the secondary curriculum. And we also talk a lot about special education and inclusion of those students, co-teaching. And so that it's all of us. It's something that we cannot do on our own as a curriculum department or special services department, but it's something that encapsulates a lot of the work that we are already doing. And other departments are doing. So it's going to be a lot of collaboration between the different departments in our organization too.
And one of the things I really appreciate is Dr. Rowe, Marcus, and William and I are three of the newer administrators. We all started together in Dr. Rowe's first year as superintendent. And when we were all hired, Dr. Rowe kind of set this vision that we're not going to do things the way we've done things before. Just because we've done this in the past doesn't mean that it's the right way to do it. And I applaud our board for being willing to think out of the box and to do things differently, because I think institutionally, we do things that are capping our students' potential and putting that ceiling. Perfect example, we look at how many students of color are in AP classes. And then we come back to like the middle school, which is a decision that I make as a building principal in a middle school. Huntley is fortunate to have a lot of things that a lot of other districts in our state don't have. And we have a lot of students of minority and different backgrounds coming from districts that did not have the same opportunities that Huntley did. So if I have a student coming to my building for the first time and I look at their transcripts and I look at what math classes they've taken or things like that, automatically, I'm going to necessarily not put them in the highest track or put them in a class where they maybe belong just because they haven't had the prerequisite skills that normally, institutionally, we say you have to have had this, this, and this before you could do this. And we're starting to throw those things out the window and we're starting to say, why? So what? Is it okay to let them on ramp or off ramp? Or if the student is able to meet that class, even though they haven't had the prerequisite course, maybe their district didn't provide that to them. So should that mean that until they get to college, that the door is closed from them to be able to take algebra in the middle school and things like that? So we're really trying to start looking differently and not letting some of the institutional past practices limit our students.
So when you look at this, when we talk about like the institutional practices, like between COVID and all of what we're trying to figure out and starting school and really rethinking education, like we're really taking on the whole enchilada, like we taking it on all together. Like we're trying to prepare our students to be able to survive out in the world and to be able to stand up and find their voice, to stand up against the injustices, not of just the Black community, but just the injustices in race in general, because racism is just it's a social construct. It's a big thing. So how do we tear down what we socially constructed, right? And so we're trying to teach them to do that, and we're trying to just change the face of how education looks. And in order to do that, we're now just tacking on more that kids need to be able to learn in such a limited amount of time, and then time that we don't know that we have. So taking that broad approach to really rethink education is kind of where we are and where we've been. And we've grappled a lot with the challenges, but also too knowing that the community is behind us, right? We had a lot of community members that were a part of these conversations. We talked about it we just came off of our strategic planning year and released a strategic plan for our next 5 years. And this was part of it. And really having our community understand and be open and honest about the work that we are doing. And while we talk about all of what is happening right now, we are just at the tip of the iceberg of really getting to do the work. We got it on paper. Now it's just time to really start taking some action and moving forward, which is going to be the most challenging part of what we're getting ready to do.
And yeah, and I agree 100%, Marcus. At the end of the day is how we have to be brave. The Board of Education was brave, Dr. Rowe was brave, the cabinet was brave, leadership is brave, and just give them, I feel like sometimes teachers need the permission to talk about it. You know, we are now moving into our next week, we're starting our anti-racism professional development series for teachers, and it's basically giving you the language. Yes, this is the language that you will use, because those crucial conversations are hard, and it starts to, how do I refer it? African American or Black or people of color. So teachers want to do what is the best for students. They just need the support and giving up. And we are doing that, giving them the language to start having those conversations. And the other thing is, we as an organization are, you know, we're a big organization, so it's changes a process. Mentorship is a process. But in this week, we were interviewing for a position in the high school, and there was a lot of questions about equity and about diversity and about inclusion. Now that we're doing when we were working with our e-learning remote plan, where we're looking into our options for next year, we are asking those questions as like, okay, are all the kids, we're serving all the kids, what are the needs of different kids or special populations? So I think the more we have those conversations, the more everybody feels the need to have them and the permission to have it. And that's what we have to give them as an organization.
Thank you. I think that's really interesting. And, you know, I think it was really interesting what you said as well, Marcus, as far as, you know, District 158 kind of capitalizing on this moment that we are in, where all of our educational norms have kind of been thrown out the window anyway, and capitalizing on that opportunity to kind of, you know, really break things down and look at the institution of District 158 and you know, really apply a newly critical lens to say, you know, while we're having these conversations about educational equity and we're given this opportunity to kind of, you know, start from scratch in some ways, how can we look at aspects of our systems that haven't been working well for certain demographics and certain populations of our student body? And while we have this kind of flexibility, while we have this, you know, moment to really start over, how do we take an educational equity lens to everything? And, you know, I'm realizing that perhaps, you know, for some of our readers at the Northwest Herald, who are less familiar with these kinds of discussions, we perhaps should have started with a definition of, you know, racial and educational equity. So I'm wondering if anyone wants to provide just like very briefly before we move on, you know, since you guys are modeling so much after that, or, you know, with equity in mind, you know, what does equity really look like as far as ensuring that students don't just have equal access, but they have equitable access and individualized access?
So we start with the idea that educational equity or equity is not giving everybody the same, but it's giving everybody, a student what they need at the time that they need. So time is also important, and that's regardless race, social economical status, gender preference, and language. But basically, our working definition and the definition that we have in our plan is educational equity is giving all the supports that student needs at the moment that they need it, regardless any other characteristics of or any other intersectionalities.
Thank you, Rocio. Thank you.
And I think any parent would know that there is no rule book when you're raising people. And we as a school have rules and have policies and things like that. But I think we have to understand that not everybody fits those. And sometimes veering off of those, if it's appropriate and if it's in the best interest of the student, I think having that permission from our school board and from our administration is important for our teachers and for our community to know that we are giving students exactly what they need, not just what page 14 in a certain manual says that most people need.
And I think I would add too that we've been very passionate about making things culturally relevant and making sure that all of our students, Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop always says windows and mirrors. So we want students to be able to get a glimpse into what life is like for people that are different than they are, but we also want to see themselves reflected in the work that they're doing and what they're seeing in their classrooms.
Very well said. So then with the time that we have left, I really want to focus on, you know, what some of you guys have already touched upon, which is the aspect of this plan, this framework that I found to be wonderful, but also unique compared to some of the plans around equity that you see coming out of different institutions, in that this was, from the beginning, you know, it's very clear from reading it that it was meant to be extremely actionable and, you know, easy to implement, or perhaps easy is the wrong word, but, you know, providing tools and opportunities for growth rather than, I think that focusing on identifying goals and philosophies to incorporate into the world of District 158 is one thing. And I think that's enough work as it is. I'm sure you guys could, speak to that, but I think that, crafting the framework in a way that wasn't just going to be, like, here is the ideal. We all want to get here. But I think that you guys have touched upon, what really needs leadership is how do we get there? Because I think that when it comes to the ideals and the goals that were expressed in the plan, I think that we could probably say that the majority of people within the community of District 158, want to get there or agree with those kind of values or think it's important, but need the leadership really on where do we start, what can I do, how can I help? So I think it was wonderful, Rocio, you sent me the document where you guys have actually created like a physical template breaking down each of those goals and saying like, okay, we're going to fill this out, we're going to figure out what we can do first and how we can work up from there. So I wonder if anyone has any commentary around that aspect of the plan and the tangible action items that are going to be prioritized first, and maybe if you have something that you are particularly excited about.
Well, the one thing I'll say, is with this plan, we've built it in a way where we talk about once we get to the end of our cycle, right, and we go back to look and say, hey, what have we done and where are we? It's not, hey, what have we done? Like, what have we done? Where are we? Great, we did it. There's never gonna be a we did it, right? As long as this community is continuing to grow. I mean, they're still building homes in subdivisions, right? And we're going to be introducing new people into this district year after year after year, and we have to help them understand what the culture is. So we're going to continuously be teaching. We will know when we've done it when people can start teaching at many different levels, whether that be in the community, whether that be parents, whether that be administrators and teachers and district office officials and board members, like everybody we'll know we made it at that point. But the key is that, we're continuing to have these conversations. And, when we talk about actions, we look at, for me, when looking at these actions is like, what's important right now? Like what can we start with to see some growth? And I typically call them small wins. Like, what are the small wins? How can we make these small wins? Because so many small wins are going to compound to bigger things, right? As opposed to taking off, big pieces and failing at them because we bit off more that we can chew, right? And so I think our actionable items are small bite-sized pieces that we can go back and forth on and say, okay, hey, we got this piece. Now what can we add as we continue to go along? So that's what I'm excited about, in this plan, is that I think we did it with intentionality. We were specific about what we wanted to do. We were specific about what we wanted to achieve in a period of time that we wanted to do it. And we got there. And we told ourselves that now that we've got it on paper, now the real work begins. It was easy to a degree, sitting around a table and breaking down our own biases and talking about our experiences and getting some words on paper. And now this is where we're going to start the journey of walking what we decided we wanted our district to be a part of.
Yeah, I specifically remember when we were talking on when we were remote learning during a Zoom meeting, and we were like talking about the success indicators and thinking about like, well, what does this look like? Like, what does this mean? And my brain as a special ed teacher is used to writing like very specific goals that are like very cut one way, and like this means that we achieved it and then we move on to the next. And I think like that was also a really good realization of this process, is that as a district, as a K through 12 district, we're a large network. And it's going to look different at a lot of different levels. And though the goals that are set forth are specific, they also are somewhat general, because what it looks like at Legee Elementary School may look different at Huntley High School. But we know that coming back to the table, those conversations will be had of, well, what did we do here, and where's the next step? So thinking of it as more of a larger network scale and using the resources that we have in such a large district, it was pretty cool to realize, like, wow, like we've got a lot going on and it's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's definitely possible, and those small wins lead to much larger gains.
And I think something that's important is that we're coming out with this to the community, that we're holding ourselves accountable and responsible, that we are going to come back and report to our school board about the things that we've done well and the areas that we fell short and how we're going to revise things. And we talk a lot about how this has to be an actionable living document that isn't just another binder on a bookshelf, I call it, because we have a lot of binders that sit on bookshelves that never get opened again. And this needs to be something that we're constantly refining and going back to. But being able to come back to our school board and to our community and say, these are the areas that we've grown in, and this is where maybe we didn't hit the mark, and this is how we're gonna kind of course correct, and this is what we're gonna do to move forward, because our kids are constantly changing. So even the way our plan is written today is what we think is best for kids, but we may come back 3 or 4 years from now and we may have to make some tweaks and some modifications, and we're open to doing that.
I would just like to add that one of the things I think that will be a critical success indicator for the plan is the way that the parents in the community embrace the plan. And not only that, but the way that they're able to discuss it on the soccer field, on the baseball field, at football games, that it's not just, oh, we received the district text or the district email from the district about the equity plan, but they really understand it, and they're really able to have some of those uncomfortable conversations. Those are some things that I don't think have been happening within the parent community. So I think if we can actually turn that tide, turn that corner to one where they're actually talking about the work of the plan, the difference that it's making in the district, the difference that it's making with our students, and then be able to be courageous enough to have some of those tough conversations, to take a stance, then you'll start to see the tide start to change within the community.
Yeah, I was actually just going to circle back to you, Valerie, because I know that you mentioned earlier that part of the reason that you were, excited to join this coalition was because of some of the, really traumatizing experiences that was it your eldest son had?
Yeah, my oldest son. And then my younger two had an experience. They've had some experience as well since kindergarten.
Wow, that's a young age, very young age. I think that speaks to, what Laura was saying as far as, that these conversations are, and these kind of dynamics are happening at such a young age. So these conversations also need to be happening at a young age as well. But, I know that you mentioned that you don't want your younger children to continue to have these kinds of experiences and to have the kinds of experience that your eldest son had in high school when they get to be that age. So I wonder, now that we're at this point where this plan is in place and is beginning to kind of, the work is beginning to be done. I wonder, do you feel hopeful for that future?
I do. My husband and I, we've talked about it before, and I think the thing that I noticed that is different now that I've started to see that's changed over time is the willingness of the administration to listen. And that's the thing that I really appreciate about our conversation that we were able to have with Mr. Venetico. But it started prior to that, even with Dr. Rowe and with Mr. Brummer, who I mentioned previously, is their willingness to listen. And over time, I have, quietly been keeping track of, just the different work that Dr. Rowe has been doing to get to this point. So I do feel hopeful.
I think also the point that you just made a little bit earlier, as far as this stretching to conversations between parents and conversations beyond, school grounds into the household, is going to be extremely important. I was, glad to see that there is that, community is one of the pillars in the plan, because I think, Laura, you also pointed out that it's difficult to have these conversations in the school setting if they're not happening at home. And it has to be kind of, you have to bridge that gap, and it has to be a joint effort, and it all has to happen together. So I guess, how do you guys see that the district will ensure that that bridge, remains in place and that they continue to listen and that parents are sort of engaged moving forward? What does that piece of it kind of look like?
I think it's more of, constant communication with them. Like, we send a ton of communication. And I think, having our parents be a part of our conversation in the buildings. At the high school, we have a parent power team. I know there's PTAs and so forth at the elementary and middle schools that support the work that happens within the buildings. And being intentional about making the work that we're doing be a part of our everyday work and our everyday conversation. Just like we talk about equity within the classroom and from a curriculum and instruction lens, and when it comes to special services and providing for our students and the needs that way, we also too provide for our sports teams, and we provide for our academic teams, right? And so how can we continually do that to support the work that is going on, and how can our PTAs and our parent power teams be able to kind of jump in and help be kind of some carriers of this plan? Like the coalition was, yes, a team of about 40 people that were together on Wednesday nights at the district office for 2 hours, reading books and talking and eating Lou Malnati's pizza and just hanging out with each other, right? But that's 40 people don't make up the district, right? And 40 people aren't going to carry this plan forward by themselves, right? We have to mobilize the people that come to our doorstep of the school building and say, hey, how can we help and support you? Here's how you can help and support. We have this plan. We want to tell you about it, and we want you to help control some of the narrative, because we also too know that the negative side of this, on the positive side, like, there are a lot of people who are for this, but just as there's some people who are out there who are against it as well, that live within our boundaries of our district, and we have to be able to help them understand and give them everything that they need to be able to figure it out to figure out where they stand on this for themselves, because the work is going to get done regardless. Like, we are too powerful of a team for the work to stop. And we want to get as many people on the bus as possible to say, hey, you belong here, you fit on this bus, and we want you to be able to, when somebody moves into the district and says, hey, tell me about the schools, and you can speak to this just as well as anybody on the coalition.
Yes, and I think that the big word is transparency. We want to be transparent. I know Dr. Rowe is trying to get this open communication, two-way communication with the community, with parents. We have several group of parents. We have a SEAC, that is a Special Education Action Committee for our special education families and students. We have the BPAC, is the Bilingual Advisory Committee for our bilingual families. We have the Superintendent Advisory. It's a group of parents that meet with Dr. Rowe and just discuss different topics. And we also and I think Dr. Billing talked about that, about our strategic plan. So we have monthly meetings this year, at least for 6 months, with talking about what are the goals that our parents want to see in our strategic plan. Our strategic plan is a document that basically gives us direction and gives a direction for our district. And it's a 5-year document. And we, in some of those meetings, we're close to 200 people, 120 people, just talking about what are the priorities for our families, our community members, for the district that will give us direction for the next 5 years. So opening this type of two-way communications, listening to parents, is something that we are very interested in, and we're going to keep doing.
That's awesome. I love that you highlighted the aspect of transparency, because I think that is very important. Transparency, accountability, as far as just ensuring that these goals are met. Rocio, I know you touched on, it sounds like one of the first things you guys will be doing is this professional development opportunity around anti-racism. I saw from the plan that within the next year, there's a lot of goals set around you know, looking at curriculum and, you know, inclusivity within curriculum and applying just kind of a different lens to that. Looking at hiring, recruitment, looking at, you know, counseling and support systems that are in place for students. I thought that was really important as well, as far as, you know, just making sure that there's kind of clear avenues there as far as students knowing where they're supposed to go. I think that that's, you know, it's wonderful the way that the plan is laid out as far as having those goals. So then in the spirit of transparency and accountability, you know, you just mentioned a lot of groups as far as who will be, you know, on top of district staff, making sure that this plan is implemented and is referred back to and doesn't just become a binder on the shelf, like you said, Tony. So what will become of the Equity Action Coalition moving forward? Will you guys, you know, meet every once in a while as a kind of checkup as well? Or is this, you know, sort of the end for the coalition?
Well, it's not the end. The plan, the next step, the first step was to get the plan to the board, and that happened like weeks ago. And for the next year, the vision that we have, and we have to get back with the team, but it's to still have like probably 2 meetings a year with the big group of the Equity Coalition, and move to a smaller Equity Advisory Committee. Then that the team of, again, representatives for every like I will say every group in the district will be you know, just working and just giving a little direction for the plan, and just meeting more frequently. Again, every year we go back to the board and we say, like Marcus shared, this is where we are at this point. This is some of our challenges, and we present like a whole year of work. So next steps, yes, we plan to meet as an Equity Coalition Committee 2 times a year, and then have probably every other month meetings with a small group that will come from some of the members of the Equity Action Coalition.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for being with me tonight. I know that I have already kept you well past the kind of time frame that I, you know, set at the beginning. So I just want to give some space if anyone has anything else that they want to add. You know, I think the only question that I had written down that we didn't hit on was, well, we sort of did hit on in a lot of ways, but I guess I didn't ask it explicitly, but was, you know, what kind of impact this kind of educational equity framework, you know, if this were implemented, and if this kind of wonderful work that you guys are doing was able to take place at school districts and schools across the nation, what kind of impact can this have on the futures of our students and our communities here? That was the one question that I had that we didn't hit on. I wonder if anyone has any thoughts to add to that, or just in general, if you have anything that you were hoping to contribute but didn't get the chance to.
When you look at the news, right, and some of the situations that we've had, and you look at all of these protests that are taking over, right, if you just pause on any frame of the news and just look at the people who are in that demographic, you see young people. You see a lot of young people who are now trying to find and figure out their voice. And they're trying to figure it out after being out of high school, kind of in college now, or out of college, right? They're at that point, right? We have an opportunity now to create that impact a lot earlier, starting at early childhood, where we can have them for 13 years in our district to be able to go through and helping them understand and find their voice now in a safe space. Because sometimes in growing, they're going to make mistakes. Like in high school, there are kids who do and say things that's just like, I can't believe you just said that, right? So let's teach you and let's help you, because you can recover in many situations. You can recover from some of the mistakes that you made. When you get out into the real world, you may say something or do something that can be catastrophic, right, to your future and so forth. And so we want to help prepare them. And so we want that impact, and we want to be just like we said, we're Destination 158. Like we want to be that lighthouse for people to be able to look at the work that we're doing and say, we don't want to recreate the wheel, but we also too want to learn, because there are people who are not as aggressive at doing the work as we are, and there are some districts who are more aggressive than doing the work that we are. And I think we found the place that we needed to be, in my opinion. I think we found the place that we needed to be for right now, to be able to begin to work and to move this community forward. So I'm invigorated to know that I will be able to help lead my staff and lead my students down a path where we can now begin to open the doors, create some groups within the building that focus specifically on race and equity, because the students, and they're ready for it. They've been talking about it for a while, and now it's time for them to get to doing some of the work.
I think at the end of the day, we get into education, even as teachers, as administration, to do right by kids. And I think that being a part of the Equity Coalition and just this whole process, like at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I feel like we're really trying to do right by these kids. And if I can go to bed at night knowing that and thinking that and striving towards that, then that's a good thing. And I feel like encompassing all of the plan together and all of the different pillars and all of the things, it's doing right by our kids in our district, and it makes me excited to be here,
And right now, our kids are our future. I joke and say that they're going to pick our nursing homes one day, but they're also going to be the ones who are in Washington making the laws and things like that. And right now, in the world we live in, when you look at who is making the laws and things like that, there's a lot of white men still. And I don't anticipate in the future that that's always going to be the case. And I think through some curriculum changes, we're going to have students who identify as transgender, who are going to start seeing contributions that other people who identify that way made. And I think they're going to see leaders in our district who are openly gay and African American and of different races who are successful and who are making a difference, and going to really empower our students to go for it, and know that they don't have that ceiling on them.
I think I would add too, we're not trying to rewrite history. We are just trying to let kids see that they are represented in all of history, and they don't have to wait 13 years to make a difference in the world. Why can't the things that they're doing now start to make a difference and start to make the changes that they want to see in the world? So I think that's really where a lot of the power comes in, and I'm super excited to see that happen.
I think we spoke quite a bit as a group about how many of us only know a single story about somebody who's Black, someone who's gay, and that if our kids leave our school district and they only know a single story about, the kid that sat next to him in lunch and that's how they form their worldview, shame on us. And we can do better, and we need to provide a more diverse learning experience for our kids.
Are you able to hear me? Okay, I wasn't sure because I wasn't coming through before. I just want to say, I think that as a parent, and just with the handful of representatives on the committee that you have this evening, we have infinite opportunities to make an impact, not only just in 158, but throughout the community beyond Huntley. I work as an educator in another district. I also have contact with other parents who are part of similar Black parent organizations in other districts. So if you look at just the contacts that I have, that Laura has, Craig, Roseal, and the list goes on and on, the work that we're doing here on this task force has an infinite, immeasurable impact upon just McHenry County, Lake County, Cook County. So I think this is only the beginning of something that will be a change agent for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. All right. Well, with that, I think that I will wrap us up for the evening. Once again, thank you all so much for being with me tonight. And thank you so much for all of your work on this wonderful plan.